It's time for Ask Your Auntie, the show that gets real with teen girls about life. They ask, and we answer with tea. Tools for excellence and achievement. The goal? To help girls make better decisions in real time. When you can't ask your mom or G-Ma, ask your auntie. Now here's your host, Marisa Terrell, Esquire.
Got questions? Ask your auntie. I'm Marisa Terrell, but you can call me Auntie M. I'm director of the High Tea Society Foundation and the host of this podcast, Ask Your Auntie, where we provide teen girls, also known as sugars, with reliable answers to their questions. So let's meet our guest for today. Hey, Buffy.
Hi, Marisa.
Welcome to Ask Your Auntie.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited that you're here. Now, we've known each other for almost a whole year.
Yes.
Almost a whole year. But I felt like when we met, there was some kindred spirit in there. There was a little synergy, et cetera. And the more I talk to you, the more I hear that we have so much in common.
Indeed. I agree. You stood up, and I just remember looking at you, and I was like, who is she? I like what she's saying. Like, I need to know her.
Yay!
I remember thinking that.
So we met, though, at this group. It was the Excellence in Government program, a leadership program. Tell us, sugars, a little bit about that.
Oh, man. So this leadership program was really about us becoming more self-aware and understanding who we want to be as a leader and how we want to make a difference in government so that, we can, be a better public servant. So the core values that we took away, we talked about values a lot, especially in the beginning. That plays into how you show up as a leader, just those core values. And so it was a really fulfilling program for me. I don't know what you took away in the end, but it certainly made like a huge impact on me overall. Like, I know now exactly what I'll take from this program and how I'll apply it, not just professionally, but personally too.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the first time I was ever in a group of like all federal government workers at this high level. These are GS 14s and 15s who really want to learn about leadership. What struck me, though, was that people do take classes on this. Like, I used to think that everybody just like, poof, they're a director. Poof, you know what I mean? They're running this and that. Right. So sugars, listen, you want to do something, you want to learn how to do something, look around, find a course, talk to your teachers if there's something that you want to get better at, because people don't automatically just pop up and become experts. Yeah. There's training involved.
Yeah, you don't show up great. You are great, but you don't show up that way. You have to invest in yourself to get there. Yeah.
Right. So that's sort of what I took away. Now I'm all about finding resources. Where can I find a resource to take me to the next level?
Indeed.
Okay. So the purpose of this podcast really is to build up the resilience of our girls to withstand unhealthy influences. And how do we do that? Through storytelling. We want to help girls become stronger and more confident by sharing real life stories. We think that when you hear about others, what they've gone through, that they can teach you a lot and help you figure out things for yourself. So before we get into the question and answer period with Auntie Buffy, we want to get to know her a little bit better. Okay? Because we know, sugars, what do we always say? You cannot take directions from someone who is lost. So let's get to know Auntie Buffy. Okay? So what is your full name?
Okay. So Buffy is my real name.
That's her real name.
My first name is LaToya. Middle name is Buffy, right? Last name is Sheard. And I've never been called LaToya my entire life, only Buffy. So that's all I've ever known from grade school, from my earliest memory to today, right?
So Buffy is a short name, but it's a big name. Okay, so that means that I'm thinking back high school. So you come into high school and your name is Buffy. What is the reaction you're getting from people?
Oh, gosh. Most of the time it was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I don't know. So sugars don't know anything about that. Do you think they know anything about that?
No.
Y'all got to go on Netflix and look this up.
Please do. Let me tell you the short and truth. I can't make this up if I wanted to. I was in the airport and there was like a food stand, Wendy's. I had gone and there was a young girl at the counter. And you know how they ask you for your name so they can take your order.
Yes,
I said, my name is Buffy. And she didn't hear me. So I said Buffy again. And she was just like, what? And I said, Buffy, like the vampire slayer. And she's like, who's that? I was like,
she's like,
girl,
vampire. It's a real thing.
Oh, girl, never mind. I dated myself. I was so old at that point. I just said, forget it. Just give me the french fries.
I love your name. And I think our sugars out here can understand and relate to having names that are unique and have their own story. But sometimes people are not so kind.
Right.
So, I mean, I think as you've kind of grown and matured and got more and more confidence, probably now you have a quick retort to say if somebody goes too far left with what it means or what it signifies?
I struggled a little bit. It wasn't always Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There was, a video vixen, stripper, whatever you want to call it. And that made it a little difficult for me, honestly. When she came onto the scene, all of a sudden the name was derogatory, and going out in public places, going out into the club or nightlife, you introduce to somebody or, somebody ask your name and you say Buffy, it turned into, turn around, oh, do you dance? It's all these kinds of things. And it really started doing a number on me because I had never felt so attacked. And I felt like it was a personal attack on my name, and on me and my character. And I didn't know how to handle that for a while. Now, of course, you mature and you learn how to navigate through certain situations. Obviously, I don't tolerate the disrespect at all. Like, it's my name. I'm not going to prove it to you. I'm not going to pull out ID, because you get that too. Like, let me see your ID. What's your mama name? And I'm like, you know what? That's disrespectful. Yeah. Goodbye. Right. And, you just got to know when to move along and not even entertain some things.
I love that because, listen, for our sugars out there, you can dead a conversation.
Dead
it. You don't have to engage. You can turn around and walk right on the other which way, right? So we have that power within ourselves to do that.
Absolutely.
Yay. Okay. So DMV, are you in D.C., Maryland, or Virginia?
I'm in Maryland.
Maryland. Is that where you're from?
No, I'm from North Carolina originally.
Do you hear any North Carolina in her voice? I don't hear it. Does it come and go?
Listen, the country comes out. If you catch me around my family or friends when I'm talking fast, there's people all of a sudden they'll be like, where are you from?
Okay.
I get that.
Well, you know what? I feel like half of D.C. is from North Carolina anyway, so with you in good company.
Hey. But listen, D.C., this is technically the South.
It feels like the South.
It is.
I know people like to think this is a big city. No. New York is a big city.
Right.
This is a town.
D.C., Maryland, you're Southern, okay? Sorry.
It's true.
It's
true. It's true. I'll claim it. Okay. So you're in your family growing up. What role were you playing?
I was the disruptor.
Really?
Yeah.
The oldest? Were you the oldest?
I was the youngest. I was the baby.
Youngest disruptor?
The baby's the brat. The baby is like running things, running the show. I was running everything.
Okay.
And they were just like, what do we do with her? I was so mischievous. I was just everywhere. It was all things all the time.
Were you I was talking all the time. I stayed in my room. My mom was just like, not another word. Just go upstairs. Were you that way? Always had a quick response or?
I would say curious. I was just curious about everything. You needed to explain everything to me. I wanted to know why. You can't just tell me no. Why? And so sometimes that can be a little challenging for parents. So I know I was a handful.
But now you're a mama bear.
And she's a handful.
Is your daughter you?
Oh, you know how parents say you'll get it back or it's coming back?
It's here?
Oh, it came back. It came back tenfold.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so high school was co-ed. Was it a large school? What do we think?
So I'm from a small town. A small town is, pretty much on a, ocean. You got to think by the water when you think of where I'm from. Not far from the Outer Banks, not far from Virginia Beach. It's really northeastern North Carolina, so it's right by the state border. Most people are like Raleigh or Charlotte, and I'm like, nope, go all the way to the coast, So small town. There is an HBCU there, so for any sugars that are thinking about college, Elizabeth City State University, I got to give a shout out. It is a great school, right? But there's also a Coast Guard base there, a large Coast Guard base. So that's like the two things that are popping for Elizabeth City, the HBCU and the Coast Guard base. Other than that, you get a Walmart and a few stoplights, guys. So I don't want to set you up.
It must be beautiful, though.
It's a good town. It's a good town, right? It's a good town, small. Everybody knows everybody.
Okay.
So it's a good place to live. I would definitely say if you're older and thinking about retirement, you certainly want to go and, explore. But for younger people, I mean, I wanted to get away so that I could experience this momentum, right?
Sure.
Coming outside and seeing people that look like you, that are successful and thriving. Like, you don't get that in a small town either. So, yeah, but it was a good town,
But on the water, that means can you navigate a boat?
No, we just live for the beach there. You're just, your summers are always, it's all about the beach life, basically.
The vineyard.
Not the vineyard, just to be, you've been to
No,
Virginia Beach and like the Outer Banks.
Yes,
but the Outer Banks is great. Like if anybody, knows about the Outer Banks, it's quiet, but it's fun.
Okay, well, let's get into these questions. Here I go again, because I'm loving talking to you. But we are here for a purpose. We want to answer some of these questions from our sugars. So the questions, we try to get our teen sugars to submit questions to us. So if you have some questions, you can send them to us. First question that we're going to get into is just an easy one. How do you take your tea?
I need 3 teaspoons of honey, and then I need a pack of Splenda just in case. Honey gives it the little flavor, but I need to sweeten it up some more with the Splenda. So I just,
Buffy has
I keep shaking and shaking till spirit tells me to stop.
And what kind of tea is this?
Usually it's no caffeine, so I'm usually doing
like an herbal.
I like the sleepy time teas.
Okay.
I like the herbals. I like the orange tea. I got a different, mix of teas in my house.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, here's our first question. Which voice should I listen to? They say that in our heads we have a lot of voices. Right. I remember one of my mom used to say, which kitten are we feeding today? Like, is this the good girl or is the bad girl?
No, that's real. That's real. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of noise going on, right? And so if you don't silence the noise, you really can't discern what voice to listen to, right? But a lot of times, the loudest voice, the thing that's kind of nudging you to do the right thing, that's God's voice trying to lead you or, help you to navigate through situations. And I would say leaning into that is always going to be beneficial because, God's not going to lead you down the wrong path, number one. But it goes back to the question you asked, whose voice are you listening to? You have to ask that question. Whose voice am I listening to? Because if it's not God's voice, whose voice is it? We should tell you something, right? And that should be a little concerning. Do you want to listen to another voice that's not God's voice? So, I mean, I used to hear all the time, like I remember distinctly standing in the bathroom one day and really like being freaked out about this place that I was in. I was hearing things. It was God nudging me so heavily, like just trying to get my attention in different ways. And I just remember being very afraid and kind of freaked out. Like, why is this happening to me? Why, am I going crazy? I thought I was going crazy at one point. And, if anybody does have those moments where they feel like something heavy is pushing on them, like, don't be afraid of that. You got to lean into that because, God is love and there's really no fear in love, right? There isn't. And so I shied away from that when I was younger, but it never left me. Which getting older, I'm thankful that it never left me because that's God never leaving me, right? But I was very afraid. And so I would hope that, now young people, especially even with my daughter, that she would listen to that voice and not be afraid. But I try to pour into her. I see moments where she is leading with fear. And I see moments where that voice is speaking very loudly to her. I shared that like just this past weekend, we were away in North Carolina, and she was in the back seat, and we were pulled up in front of the grocery store, and there was a homeless man that was sitting on the ground, and I couldn't see the person sitting on the ground, but she could. And so she was like, he looks very sad. And I was like, who are you talking about? And she was like, that man on the ground. I'm like, what man, what man? She's like, that man right there on the ground. She was like, do you have any money? Do you have any dollars? And I was like, no, I don't. And I'm just listening to her, kind of talk her way through it. I'm like, but you do. I knew she had just got some money from my sister. She was like, yeah, but I don't have any change, and I don't want to go in the store. I'm scared. And I was like, what do you mean you're scared? She was like, well, I'm just scared. And so I was like, well, explain. What do you mean? I said, God is telling you to do something right now. I hear it. You're asking about money. You're looking at this man. And she was like, well, I wanted to give him some money, but I'm just scared. And I said, baby, I want you to lean into that. If you're afraid of something that's good, go with it. Like, that's God's voice trying to guide you to do something good for your own soul. Like, don't be afraid of that. And I said, on the other side of that fear is a really good feeling, right? If you just get past that fear. And so she ended up actually getting out and asking him if he was hungry. And, there was a Little Caesar's pizza right up the way. And she asked what he wanted, and she went and got him a pizza. And I noticed when she brought the pizza back, she had money rolled up too. She gave him some money too. I didn't push, I didn't nudge or ask her anything. But when she got back in the car, I just, I looked at her, and, she was teary-eyed before she got out the car to take this step, And, I looked at her and I said, well, how do you feel? And she looked at me and she smiled and she was like, I'm good. I'm good.
What a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. And I love the fact that we could illustrate what we're talking about. On this side of glory, as my dad would say, there is always a wrestling between good and evil.
Always.
I mean, let's bring it up. Let's bring in the superhero concept, right? And so as you're making decisions, typically there's a good part of you that wants to go one way. And then there's another part that's the fear, because we know that fear is not of God, right? So when you're wrestling with that, that's for you, like you say, lean into it. Try to think mentally through what's happening. And if it's safe, right? She's with you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a safe place. She's not by herself approaching a strange person, right? Then, yeah. So good job. Okay.
Lean into it. That's right.
Thank you. All right. So here's another question. Now, I love this one. This is, can I give too much? Now, as women, as girls, as sugars in high school right now, yes, in fact, you can. Yes. Tell us all about it, Auntie.
Yeah. I mean, just giving of yourself is a lot. And, and sometimes it comes really natural to people. But it's funny because we talked about vampires earlier, but vampires are real, right? Some people can literally suck the life out of you. They can see your light. They can see you shining. And sometimes it's not even coming from a bad place, but they just want to be able to tap into that you have, that good energy, that bright light. And it's unfortunate that they want to tap into it, but they can't add to it, right? Because they don't have that about themselves. And what you'll end up seeing is somebody who's around you. What this looks like in real time is somebody who's around you because they like you and they like your light. But then, they're always talking negative. They always got something to say about other people. Every time they come around, it's just exhausting because they have nothing good to offer up. So you can have friendships and you can have people around and you want to be there and you want to support them and you want to, love on them because, you want friends and you want to be liked and, all of these wonderful things, but it can drain you. And so, yeah, you can absolutely give too much. I think this is one of those times where you've got to know when you're losing yourself in a friendship or in a relationship, because you can give so much of yourself that you lose yourself just trying to give to others or be there for others. And they're just steadily taking and taking and taking, and you're not realizing it because it feels like a friendship, but it also is a lot of negativity at the core of it because they don't have that light that you have.
True. And sometimes what that looks like is that you start, when you said losing yourself, all of a sudden the things that you value, going to volleyball practice, you wanted to study for this because you know that you really want to be a doctor or something. So you know that you really want to do well in sciences. But this person is constantly pulling you away from doing the things that you know you need to do.
Yeah.
That's
because
when
you're losing yourself.
You're losing yourself, and they're sort of winning because they are distracting you,
right?
So that you can't be great,
right? Now all of a sudden you're talking about people, and now all of a sudden you're trying to worry about, will this person be around? It's all these little things that add up that start taking away from you because you're literally giving too much of you to somebody else. Yeah. And even in a relationship, with a guy, when you start losing sight of who you are and, who God made you to be because you're trying to please that person, and you start losing yourself because now you're trying to keep up or you're trying to be good enough to show up for this guy so he likes you. Like, those things are the things you have to be aware of at a very early age because your light has to be protected. Your energy, your space, you have to protect that.
Yes, because there's nothing worse than looking back with regret and to be able to say, oh, if it wasn't for this person, I would have been able to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Because no, it's your life, and it's up to you to make those decisions. You see somebody distracting you. Yeah. You got to move them to the left.
Yeah. And I've certainly given to, I was engaged once. Mm-hmm. I was maybe in my early 20s, 20, 21. And I gave so much. I did. I totally lost myself. And I lost myself so bad to a point that I couldn't even look in the mirror.
Right.
So when we talk about losing yourself, you can lose yourself.
Right. Your values.
Right? Your esteem.
Yeah. Confidence.
You can lose yourself.
Okay, here's another question for us, or for you, really. Should I tell? There's a thing in our community about snitching. What do they say? Snitching is not good. But
it's not.
Sometimes it's important to tell somebody.
It is absolutely important to tell, especially if the telling is rooted in love, right? If you're leading with love and telling is because it's beneficial to somebody, whether it's going to save a person's potential future or their reputation, or if you think about it from, even from a harm standpoint, if you know that somebody can be saved or, won't be hurt because of it, yeah, you absolutely have to tell, and I know that's a struggle for a lot of people. But again, we're not walking in fear, right? So you're not worrying about retaliation. You're not worried about all of the things that can come along with, the stigma of telling. You're doing it because you know that this is going to benefit somebody for the greater good. And, again, my daughter, she's in 10th grade, and I appreciate her for coming to me with her, candor and her honesty, with her circle of friends, because we certainly had a real life situation where her friend was doing some ill-advised things on social media, and it was concerning to her as a friend, and she didn't know how to approach her and say something to her, but she felt like it was important to tell me because she understands the threat from social media and predators and men. And the girl was exposing herself on her stories, and she was like, "Mom, I gotta show you this, and I was floored, because this is a young lady that comes over to my home, and I'm like, wait, this isn't the same little girl that come to my house. Wait a minute now, hold on. And it was a real thing, and not only was she putting herself in harm's way because there are men online, grown men, people who now, see your body parts and, you're exposing yourself, but you're jeopardizing your character because this is online.
Right.
So they were screenshotting this, and from my understanding, they were spreading it all around the school. It was being shared. My daughter and the girl didn't even go to the same school, and it was ending up on my daughter's feed, on my daughter's, phone from another school. So you're damaging, yourself. And I think my daughter was genuinely trying to save a friend from ruining her reputation, from putting herself in harm's way. And, she did the right thing by telling. So telling is critical. Sometimes you wonder who to tell. And, I would hope everybody has somebody that they can confide in. But if not, they got you, right?
Tell your auntie.
Tell your auntie, baby.
Yes,
Tell your auntie.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's one. Can I trust online dating advice?
Child, no.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. There's guys, there's girls, there's groups. Everybody's got a microphone and everyone's talking.
Everybody's got a microphone and they shouldn't have one.
Mm-hmm.
Simple, right? And I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some good shows. There are some healthy conversations. But the overwhelming majority are giving advice and they are not whole themselves, right? So it's hard to take advice because you don't know these people's background. You don't know how they were raised. You don't know if they came from a dysfunctional family and have distorted values like we talked about in our ERG leadership. What are their values? You don't know where they're coming from a lot of times when they're speaking. And so you're listening to them and their dating advice. And a lot of times it's not rooted in anything except for their own experiences.
Right. And we don't know how it went.
Yeah.
Did it end well or not?
Exactly.
Like we don't know. So I think that goes back to why we try to start here talking about we've got to get to know folks a little bit. We need to, are they spiritually minded? Do they believe in God?
Right.
Do they want to have a monogamous relationships or do they want to be all over the place? Like these are things you have to know. So it's very difficult when you're trying to get advice from people and you don't know their background.
And you don't know who you are.
Yes.
Right? Especially at this young age, if you don't even know who you are yet, you can't have somebody telling you who you're supposed to be in a relationship and how you're supposed to show up. Like you've got to know who you are first and foremost, so that way you can set the tone for what you expect. It's almost like they say, you attract what you are, right? So if you're broken and dysfunctional, a lot of times you might just attract that brokenness and that dysfunction from somebody. So knowing who you are first sets the tone, and then knowing who you're listening to and understanding what they're talking about and where they're coming from is the other part of that. And otherwise, it's just a conversation and just listen to for entertainment, but you don't take that and run with it. And that's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say another thing is that when some of these young men online who are giving advice, they're treating the women they're with so terribly.
Right.
That even when the information comes out, people still follow their advice, which is so strange to me. You hear that this person treated their wife this way, or they've got all of these different women. They're not disclosing information. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, we've seen
Why
it.
are we still following these people?
Yeah, we've seen it. Like the one guy we talked, he was just like Mr. Perfect. The one guy, I'm not going to call his name. I think we know his name.
He used to sit in the car and he would be recording.
Yes.
And then it all came out that he was like,
right.
I don't know, quasi-abusing his girl. I don't know.
And cheating on his wife.
Yeah, but definitely cheating on her.
But everybody was tuning into this guy. Like, he was the guy. And everybody was like, oh, yeah. And, that's why you also don't look at other people's relationships and be like, oh, goals over there. You don't know what's really going on in their house.
And that flows right into this question right here. My friend has it all. Why don't I? Mm-hmm. That's a question. What do you think?
I think it's easy to look at other people and see things that you want for yourself. But, I mean, it always goes back to God and his timing, right? His timing is perfect. You don't look at what other people have because you don't know how they got it, number one. You don't know their circumstances. You don't know. So when you look at other people and what they have, you got to take that with a grain of salt, to be honest, I don't know. It's just one of those really interesting things. And sometimes it's not I have, like, envy comes in all ways. I can distinctly recall, like, for me, my struggle wasn't about what other people had physically or tangibly. It was about physical appearances. Like, I struggle in my mind. I thought I was the fattest thing walking. You couldn't tell me I wasn't Jabba the Hutt. Like, people don't know who that is. I mean, you couldn't tell me I wasn't Rasputia. Okay, I thought, and all my friends were small or petite. You know, like you, like yourself, you're petite, right? All of my friends were pretty small, and I remember feeling like, you know, I want to be thin. I want to be skinny. Like, I just really wanted that thing, and it was the struggle for me. But it's funny because looking back, I realized I was tripping, absolutely, right? But in that moment, you know, I was wanting this thing that I felt like everybody could have except for me. So this is also a question about control, right? The things that you can and can't control. What's in your control? And if you see something that other people have and you want that thing, you've got to remember now you have power and you can control those things. Just like we talked about with the leadership program and investing in yourself. If you see something that you want, you can absolutely get that thing. You can have that thing if you discipline yourself, put your mind to it, focus on it. It might not be that you're going to have it today, but you might be able to have that thing tomorrow.
Right.
And in God's time, you'll have it if you're disciplined to actually get it because you want it that much. You don't have to look at somebody else and wish and want for that thing when you have control. So it's about really knowing the power that you have for yourself.
Right, and being careful not to manipulate circumstances and people to get what you perceive that you want.
Right.
Because when you do it that way, it always backfires.
Always backfires.
God, that's not God's way. And so he's gonna eventually you're gonna have to learn that lesson.
Right.
And learning those lessons are hard. So yes, please.
And when it comes to men and boyfriends, you know, you can see that boyfriend and that, you know, think that you want that. And sometimes girls will, you know, step across the line and they will do their thing, but just know that the man's coming for you. You don't have to step over and cross the line with a girlfriend or friend. You know.
Right.
That's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
Well, thank you, Auntie Buffy, for sharing your tea with us. Growing up in D.C. is hard, but sugar, you don't have to do it alone. Join us every week for reliable answers to your questions. I'm Auntie M, director of the High Tea Society. You can send us a DM at High Tea Society INC. We have the tea to help girls succeed. Tools for excellence and achievement.
You've been listening to Ask Your Auntie with your host, Marisa Terrell, Esquire. The transition from girlhood to womanhood can be difficult without guidance. We have the tea to help girls succeed. When you can't ask your mom or G-Ma, ask your auntie.